When Mahalath, daughter of Ishmael, became the wife of Esau, it seemed like a small, almost forgotten detail in the vast genealogies of Genesis. But this seemingly insignificant marriage was far from ordinary. It connected two powerful family lines, Abraham's and Ishmael's, creating a bridge that would carry God's unfolding plan. Esau and Mahalath's union reveals that even through flawed choices, God's purposes are at work. Their story isn't just about lineage. It's a profound lesson in faith, family, and reconciliation, offering us timeless insights into the ways God uses imperfect people for His greater purpose. In this reflection, we will explore the background of Esau and Mahalath, the deeper meaning behind their union, and the timeless lessons it offers us today. This union, briefly mentioned in Genesis, holds deeper meaning when examined closely. In Genesis 28 verse 9 we read, "So Esau went to Ishmael and took Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael and sister of Nebaioth, to be his wife, in addition to the wives he already had." Later in Genesis 36 verses 2 to 3 we find another reference. Esau took his wives from the Canaanite women, Ada, daughter of Elon the Hittite, Oholibama, daughter of Anna and granddaughter of Gibeon the Hivite, and Basemath, Ishmael's daughter and sister of Nebaioth. To understand the significance of this moment, we must first revisit the origins. Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac, each born of different mothers. Ishmael, the older son, was born to Hagar, Sarah's Egyptian maidservant, while Isaac was the miracle child of Sarah, born in fulfillment of God's promise. Despite being brothers, their paths took starkly different directions. Ishmael and his mother were sent away into the wilderness, while Isaac remained in Abraham's household, becoming the heir of the covenant. Fast forward generations later, and we witness a surprising twist. Esau, Isaac's firstborn, marries Mahalath, also known as Basemath, a daughter of Ishmael. This union is not just a marriage, it's a moment of reconciliation, reconnecting the long divided branches of Abraham's family tree. A generation after Isaac and Ishmael went their separate ways, their children are brought together through marriage. Esau, the eldest son of Isaac, decides to marry Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, even though he already had Canaanite wives. Esau was known for following his desires more than seeking God's will. So, what does this unexpected marriage mean? Why is it important for the bigger story of the Bible? To understand the full weight of this surprising marriage, we need to take a closer look from different angles. We'll begin by getting to know the key figures involved, Esau and Mahalath, as well as their fathers Isaac and Ishmael, two sons of Abraham, whose paths diverged but whose stories remain deeply connected. Then we will dig deeper into the meaning of this union. What did it represent for their families? How was it viewed in the cultural and spiritual context of their time? And finally, we will reflect on what this account means for us today. What can we learn about relationships, decisions, and how God works through human choices, even flawed ones, to carry out His purposes? Now let's open the pages of Genesis and uncover the lessons hidden in this overlooked but meaningful story. We will begin with Esau, a man whose life made a strong impression. As the firstborn of Isaac and the grandson of Abraham, Esau had an important place in the family line. But from the start, he comes across as someone more focused on physical needs than spiritual ones, someone who follows his impulses instead of seeking God's direction. The Bible describes Esau as a red and hairy man, a strong and skilled hunter. But while he was brave, he was also impulsive and careless. One of the most well-known examples is when he gave up his birthright to his twin brother Jacob for a simple bowl of lentils. That decision showed that he cared more about satisfying his hunger than holding on to the spiritual blessings meant for him. Another poor choice was his marriage to Canaanite women, which brought sorrow to his parents, Isaac and Rebekah. By marrying women who didn't follow the God of Abraham, Esau seemed to turn away from the faith of his family and threaten the future of the chosen line. Still, Esau was the firstborn. According to tradition, he should have received the family's blessing and leadership role. But in a surprising twist, one that was part of God's plan, Jacob was the one who ended up receiving the blessing, while Esau was left in the background with an unclear future. So, who was Mahalath, the woman Esau later married? The Bible doesn't tell us much. We know she was the daughter of Ishmael and the sister of Nebaioth, making her Abraham's granddaughter. But beyond that, we don't learn anything about her character, looks, or personal qualities. Some believe Esau married Mahalath in an effort to fix things. By marrying a cousin from Abraham's other line, perhaps he hoped to reconnect with his heritage and faith. But others point out that Ishmael's family, although descended from Abraham, were not part of the promised line. That promise passed through Isaac and Jacob, not Ishmael. This marriage raises deep questions about identity, faith, and the struggle to return to one's roots. By joining himself to Ishmael's family, Esau may have thought he was repairing the damage caused by his earlier choices. But in reality, this decision likely showed how far he had drifted from understanding God's plan. Instead of returning to the true path of faith, Esau's choice reflected more confusion and distance from the divine calling. And since the Bible gives us little more information about Mahalath, we are left to imagine her role quietly, standing in the background. Still, her position as Esau's wife and the daughter of Ishmael connects to important lines in biblical history. To fully grasp the meaning of this union, we must step back and look at the generation before, at the lives of Isaac and Ishmael, the sons of Abraham. Both were born through divine intervention, but in the very different circumstances. Ishmael was born to Hagar, Sarah's maidservant, at a time when Abraham and Sarah were struggling to believe God's promise of a child. Isaac, however, was the child of promise, born to Sarah in her old age when all hope seemed lost. Yet the two could not live together. At God's command, Abraham had to send Ishmael and Hagar away into the desert. This heartbreaking moment caused a deep split between the two family lines. While God promised to make Ishmael a great nation, it was Isaac who would carry on the covenant. He would be the one through whom God's promises and blessings would continue. Isaac would pass on the faith in the one true God and become the line through which the plan of salvation would unfold. However, Ishmael wasn't cast aside completely. He remained Abraham's firstborn, and the Bible tells us that Abraham loved him. God listened to Abraham's prayer for Ishmael and blessed him. And when Abraham died, both Isaac and Ishmael came together to bury their father, an act that showed their bond was not entirely lost. In the story of Isaac and Ishmael, we see the full complexity of God's plan. Though God chose one line to carry his promise, he never stopped caring for the other. His plan is full of mystery. He chooses specific people for specific roles, Yet, he continues to bless others along the way. Even when human choices go against his will, God still weaves them into his greater purpose. This is the family and spiritual background in which the marriage of Esau and Mahalath takes place. On the surface, it may seem like a simple family arrangement, but it holds deeper meaning in the larger story of salvation. Now that we have looked at who Esau and Mahalath are, it's time to explore what their union might represent. The most striking detail about this marriage is that it brings together two separate lines of Abraham's family, Isaac's and Ishmael's. These two branches had been apart for a generation. Could this marriage be a symbolic attempt to heal the divide between the two brothers? It's possible. Perhaps by marrying his cousin Mahalath, Esau was trying to rebuild the broken family ties between the descendants of Abraham. Maybe beyond the hurt and rivalry of the past, the bond of blood was strong enough to push for unity once more. Some Bible commentators even see Esau's choice as a kind of repentance. By choosing a wife from within Abraham's family, even if through Ishmael, Esau may have been trying to reconnect with his roots and the faith of his ancestors. However, this marriage could also be viewed more practically. Esau may not have had any spiritual motive at all. He could have simply wanted to strengthen his family ties and build alliances with Ishmael's descendants. Blood connections often have a logic of their own, one that doesn't always line up with spiritual intent. Still, this decision stands out in Esau's story. Until this point, all his wives had come from the local Canaanite tribes, people outside of Abraham's family. Choices that had deeply disappointed Isaac and Rebekah. They had hoped to keep the covenant line pure, and Esau's earlier marriages had gone against that hope. So, what caused this sudden change in Esau? Why would someone who had never cared much about family traditions suddenly choose to marry his cousin from Ishmael's family? Some believe Esau was trying to please his parents, especially his father Isaac, hoping to win back his favor and make up for the pain caused by his earlier marriages to Canaanite women. By marrying someone from within the extended family, maybe Esau thought he could prove himself and gain the blessing he had once lost. But not everyone agrees with this idea. Esau was known for doing what he wanted, not for following rules or seeking approval. It's hard to believe he changed just to satisfy his parents. Could it be that Esau's marriage to Mahalath was more about proving a point? Some think it was a way for him to show his independence, or even challenge his brother Jacob. By forming a bond with Ishmael's descendants, perhaps Esau was trying to strengthen his own position and presents himself as a serious rival in the family inheritance. Whatever his reason, Esau's marriage had real consequences. We can imagine how his parents, Isaac and Rebekah, must have felt when they heard the news. They were already upset about his earlier choices, and this new alliance with Ishmael's side, though still connected to Abraham, may have only added to their concern. Because the big issue here is spiritual inheritance. Ishmael, though Abraham's son, was not the child through whom God's promise would continue. That promise was passed on to Isaac and then meant for Jacob. By marrying Mahalath, Esau was mixing two different branches of the family, which could confuse or weaken the identity and calling of the chosen people. Even though the Bible makes it clear that Jacob would receive the blessing and carry on the covenant, Esau's decision leaves a mark. His marriage to an Ishmaelite adds a layer of tension, as if it could have disrupted the path God had chosen. It stands as a reminder of how our choices, whether made with good or selfish intentions, can have lasting effects on the people around us and on God's unfolding plan. But we must not forget the sovereignty of God, a God who can bring good even out of flawed decisions. What may seem like a mistake from a human point of view can still serve God's greater plan. Esau's marriage to Mahalath, though unexpected and complicated, becomes a powerful reminder that God's covenant is not limited by human boundaries or family lines. By including a descendant of Ishmael in the story of salvation, God shows us that His blessing is not just for one group of people. It is meant to reach all nations. What at first appears to be a threat to the purity of the chosen lineage actually becomes a sign of hope. Through this unexpected union, we catch a glimpse of God's wider purpose, a purpose that includes all people, not just a select few. In this light, the marriage of Esau and Mahalath is not just an odd historical detail. It reflects the heart of a God who welcomes everyone, who writes His story through both the expected and the surprising. This quiet moment in Genesis carries a message that still speaks today. God's love reaches beyond our divisions, and His plans are not limited by our failures. To understand how this applies to our lives now, we need to ask what this ancient story can teach us as followers of Christ. One clear lesson is the importance of choosing a spouse with spiritual wisdom. Esau's life gives us much to think about. His earlier marriages to Canaanite women outside the faith of his fathers, brought grief to his parents and showed how far he had drifted from their spiritual path. His choices weren't just personal, they affected his family and his place in God's plan. This teaches us that marriage is not just about emotion or convenience. It's also a spiritual decision, one that can shape not only our lives but the lives of those who come after us. Choosing a partner who shares our faith and values can strengthen our walk with God, while ignoring that can lead to heartache and disconnection. So, as we reflect on Esau and Mahalath, we are reminded to trust in God's guidance, to seek His will in our relationships, and to believe that even when we fall short, God can still work through our lives to fulfill His greater purpose. On the other hand, Esau's marriage to Mahalath, his cousin from Ishmael's family, seems more in line with his spiritual roots, though it still carries some uncertainty. For us today, this speaks clearly. We are called to be thoughtful and prayerful when choosing a life partner. In a world where mixed marriages are common and where love is often based only on emotions or material needs, the Bible gently reminds us to first seek someone who shares our faith and values. As Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 7, verse 39, a believer is free to marry anyone she wishes, but he must belong to the Lord. This is not about following outdated rules or returning to an old tradition. It's about placing God at the center of our relationship, allowing Him to guide our story so that love becomes not just a personal journey but part of His greater holy plan. Choosing to marry in the Lord means surrendering our plans to God's will, trusting that His purpose for our lives includes our relationships. It also means, where possible, seeking the guidance and blessing of our parents or spiritual mentors, not out of pressure or fear, but out of love and respect for those who raised us in the faith. Their wisdom can often shed light on what we cannot yet see. We remember how Isaac and Rebekah were deeply troubled by Esau's earlier marriages to Canaanite women. Their sadness reminds us that the choice of a spouse doesn't just affect us, It teaches our whole family and the larger community of faith. Marriage is never just a private decision, it's a spiritual and generational one. Yet, the story of Esau and Mahalath also reassures us of something beautiful. Even in our flaws and uncertain decisions, God remains at work. Though their marriage may not have been perfect or fully aligned with God's covenant plan, it still became part of the larger story of salvation. God doesn't reject us because of our mistakes. Instead, He patiently teaches us, corrects our path, and uses even our failures to bring about something good. As Paul reminds us in Romans 8, verse 28, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This doesn't mean we should treat marriage lightly or assume God will fix everything if we make careless choices. As we have seen, choosing a spouse is a serious decision that calls for faith, prayer, and discernment. But it also means we shouldn't be frozen by fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, or fear of making the wrong decision. Even if, like Esau, we have made poor choices in the past, even if our relationships carry pain or regret, God doesn't give up on us. He can bring new life where we see only emptiness. He can bring healing where we feel broken. He can lead us step by step into a renewed covenant. Our part is to remain open to Him, to turn to Him with honesty and humility, and to trust His Spirit to guide us forward. Finally, the marriage of Esau and Mahalath carries one more powerful message: the call to reconciliation. Their union, though imperfect, symbolically brings together two family lines that had been divided for a generation. It's a quiet reminder that healing is possible, even after long separation. In a world where many families are torn by arguments, misunderstandings, or deep hurts, this story invites us to take steps toward peace. No matter how tangled our family history may be, no matter what differences have divided our ancestors, we all come from the same Creator, and we are all called to live in unity. This story calls us to actively pursue forgiveness and healing within our families and communities. We are reminded not to let the pain and resentment of the past block the love and unity that God desires for us in the present. The Holy Spirit has the power to tear down the walls that divide us, whether cultural, personal, or generational. Practically, this might mean reaching out to a family member we have lost contact with, opening a conversation with a sibling we have argued with, or showing kindness to someone we may have once excluded. These simple but powerful acts of reconciliation reflect the heart of Christ, who gave His life to restore peace between God and humanity, and between people themselves. Of course, this journey isn't easy. Forgiveness and acceptance take courage, humility, and a willingness to admit our wrongs and offer grace to others. But it's through this process that our families and communities can begin to reflect the beautiful unity God desires. A unity that embraces diversity while remaining rooted in love and faith. Thus, the marriage of Esau and Mahalath points us to the heart of the gospel, a God who enters into our human story with all its weakness and beauty, and calls us to live in covenant with Him through Jesus Christ. Dear friends, may the story of Esau and Mahalath remind us that no moment in Scripture is without meaning, and no part of our lives is beyond God's reach. Even in the midst of weakness, broken choices, and complex relationships, God is at work. shaping history, redeeming hearts, and inviting us into His covenant of love. Let us walk forward with faith, trusting that His plans are greater than our past, and His grace is sufficient for every step ahead.